Yes. Thank you, Francesco. Thank you, Pierre. So my name is Marek Czor. I'm team leader for cluster policy in DG GROW of the European Commission. And let me put the context in which we are having this meeting. Actually, the baseline for all these discussions is the updated industrial policy that we've published and this year and last year, the industrial policy. As you know, there are three main blocks. One is green transition. The other one is the digital transition, and the third one right now is the resilience capacity building. So that's why actually our work on cluster policy concentrated on these three pillars, and as well as in our cluster expert group, which gathers the policymakers from member states, mainly from the economic ministries or ministries of development, which are dealing with the cluster policy. They came up with 15 recommendations, 5 for each of these blocks: green transition, digital transition, and resilience. And then, of course, now we are at this stage of financial planning, and at the European Commission, which is already in the third year of its mandate. We are concentrating on implementation, so more like less on design, more on implementation, and that's why this policy toolkit comes very much in time, because it is going to give inspirations for policymakers at local, regional, and national level, as well for cluster managers, what can be done in order to put in place this twin transition and capacity building. So happy to have with you. This is I would just say this is something which needs to be populated, but what needs to populate it, I think Pierre will explain very quickly. Thank you much. Very well. I mean, not quickly, very well. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Marek. And yes, so I will be picking up on a couple of the words that you've said, and but I wanted to start with a very brief introduction of why we are talking about this. Why are we talking about clusters and the green transition? I think Marek has already alluded to it. The European Commission and the member states have agreed that this green transition is one of the big priority areas of European action in the coming years, and is absolutely needed for us to move from the traditional economy, an economy based on the use of carbon and fossil fuels that is unsustainable, and that is also characterized by overconsumption and waste that cannot be recycled, to a greener economy which is with much lower use of carbon, that is much more resource efficient and based on sustainable consumption. And so what we are trying to get at here is the bit in the middle of the slide. So trying to understand the role that clusters and cluster policy can play in making this shift from the left-hand side to the right-hand side of the slide. And there are, of course, two big elements of this. So there's the financing of this transition, because it is expensive and it will require resources from those who are already active in the market in the traditional economy, but also those who might be entering the economy or the market in the future, and who might not have this legacy of having to shift, but who will be able to go in directly with a green offer. And there's also so there's a financing element to it, and there's also a research element to it, to allow us to understand how we can actually do this shift. What is technologically, tactically needed to be able to move from one type of production system to another. And of course, the answer to this is not one answer for all industrial ecosystems, but it is different answers for different kinds of businesses and different kinds of markets. And so there's a lot of research that needs to happen there, information that needs to be gathered and built up. And so clusters play a key role in making this link between this old economy and the new economy by providing three kinds of support. This information support, where they help businesses understand, and not just businesses, but also policymakers understand what information is out there, what partners are needed, what kinds of data is needed to be able to make the shift. There's the networking element, where it's about putting together partners who need to work together, who didn't used to work together before, but who need to work together now to be able to make this innovation happen. And then there's the business support element, which is about providing direct services to their members, but to businesses and to policymakers, perhaps, to try and make this shift. And so clusters can play a very strong, a very important role in being this catalyst to go from one type of economy to another. And this is why we are talking about clusters and the green transition. And this is why we are talking about a cluster policy toolkit. So the green transition does need these kinds of clusters. Green employment is still very low across Europe, of course, compared with all other kinds of employment. But clusters are already very active in the green economy, in green sectors and technologies. 40% of cluster organizations that are registered on the European Cluster Collaboration Platform say that they work in green sectors and technologies. And that is, of course, a very large share compared to the share of the green economy in Europe at the moment. So clusters can play a very important role there, and they are already leading this the work around the green transition. Also, clusters are already providing services to companies that are their members in relation to the green transition. So when we asked clusters as part of the cluster collaboration platform what they are working on, well, they said that the green transition is one of their key collaboration interests. So they are already working with partners, other clusters or companies in areas around the green transition. It's not the only one. You see also internationalization, there, digital transition, some of the other big topics of the day, but green transition is one of the big ones. And then also, when we looked at the types of services that are provided by cluster organization, the top 15 resource efficiency services are listed on the right-hand side of the slide. So goes from practice sharing to market intelligence, technology solutions, green innovation. So a whole range of services that are being provided by clusters already. And so in relation to making the shift towards a circular, decarbonized economy. And so this led us then to try to understand how we can make better use of this. And policymakers, and the link between policymakers and clusters is very important in making that happen. The big strategies are set at the level of European and national and regional policymakers, but then they need vehicles on the ground in the field that are able to actually implement these strategies and policies, and clusters can be that. So we have, in the first instance, tried to attract policy institutions to the European Cluster Collaboration Platform, and here's a call out to all of you, if you're not already registered, to go and register your profile on the ECCP. The ECCP provides services and information to policymakers such as yourselves. I will talk about the Policy Toolkit, in a bit. And I would just like to call out again to you to just go and register your profile so that you can benefit from all of these services. One of the services that the ECCP provides is a set of country fact sheets and a mapping tool around those country fact sheets that shows where the cluster organizations sit at the moment and what they're doing at the moment, and also shows what cluster policy is in each of the 53, actually, not just 27, 53 countries that we have surveyed, where we put together fact sheets, little case studies that show what cluster policies are in place in these places. And there's a number of you can use the mapping tool to access these fact sheets and to also see which kinds of regions are doing which kinds of things in terms of policy and in terms of their cluster landscape that is present in those regions. And you can get a number of interesting statistics and bits of information about this in relation to the importance of clusters in those regions, in relation to the policy instruments, in relation to the amounts of money that are being spent on cluster policy in those regions, and also in relation to the impacts that clusters are achieving in those regions. So what about the mapping tool? Well, the mapping tool is one of those services. You see here just a screenshot from the ECCP website, where we show cluster organizations in a particular location, and we also show the kinds of services that are being provided in that location. The toolkit is not all of the mapping tool, but it is one part of the mapping tool. And what is the toolkit? So the toolkit is a database that is designed to help policymakers at different levels, at the European level, but also at the national level and at the local level and regional level, leverage the power of clusters by helping them identify policies that could help support their clusters in their region, in their territory, to affect systemic change. It is a dynamic, it's a searchable database which contains inspiring examples of cluster policies from these 53 countries that I mentioned before, that are also in the mapping tool and in the country fact sheets. And it is structured really with the needs of policymakers in mind. So it can be searched by theme, it can be searched by a kind of challenge that the policymaker is facing. And it can also be searched by the kind of support that the clusters are providing or should be providing. And this is all to help these clusters in the regions become more effective in delivering this transformation from the traditional economy to the new economy, the greener economy. The toolkit is a database, and as Marek has said, it is a start. So it is not a final database, not a final product. It is the first beta version of a toolkit. It has, I think, a list of 164 inspiring policies. So it's not an empty beta version, but it's already quite populated. But it's of course not the final product, and there will be no final product because it is a product that needs to be updated continuously. But what it is the way it is supposed to work is as a roadmap to help policymakers design cluster policy. So from through the different stages of the policymaking process, from the identification of the thematic priorities, which are of course based on the local characteristics of the territory. So what is the industrial ecosystem? What is the skills base in the territory? What are the strengths and weaknesses in the territory? From that, the policymakers will be able to understand what kinds of thematic priorities they should be setting. So is it about the digital transition? Is it about the green transition? Is it about building resilience, or is it about a combination of these, of course? Then from there, the policy toolkit provides information on strategic challenges. So what are the needs based on the needs of the local territory, infrastructure needs, business model, innovation needs, going from startup to scale up, or developing particular ecosystems. These might be needs that you might have in your territory, to defining the strategic challenges for which there are then policies that can be helpful. And these strategic challenges might be around internationalization, so helping connect the local ecosystem to ecosystems elsewhere or value chains elsewhere, connecting the value chain within the region, within the territory itself, so making these connections stronger, or reconfiguring them to go from the old to the new type of economy, reconfiguring these value chains so that they become green value chains, fostering innovation, so making sure that this research that I mentioned earlier actually happens, and that this research goes in the direction of the green transition, and then also building skills at the local level to be able to deliver the green transition. Once the challenges have been identified and the policymaker has a good idea of what kinds of thematic areas and strategic challenges they want to focus on, then the toolkit also allows to look at different kinds of cluster services, or cluster actions, cluster functions. And this is the three kinds of functions that I mentioned earlier, from providing intelligence to connecting and networking, making collaboration happen, to delivering direct business support to members or to actors in the local ecosystem. So once these kinds of strategic challenges, cluster support functions, and thematic priorities have been defined, it is then possible to look at the toolkit to try and identify inspiring practices from other places, similar regions to the ones that you are in, that can help you design your own policy. So I already talked a little bit through all of these. The toolkit is structured to with the user in mind, in the sense that policymakers might know which strategic challenge they want to tackle, but they might not have an answer to all of the other elements that I just mentioned. And it is possible to search the database just by looking at cluster policies that have been focused on supporting innovation, or cluster policies that have been focused on supporting internationalization of the local ecosystem. And it is, of course, policymakers themselves who are best placed. We can provide the tool, we can provide the structure and the database, but it's policymakers at the local level who are best placed to know what is best for their territory, or what they think their territory needs. And the toolkit is really there to help make that make those choices easier, and to help then also provide some solutions to those challenges. It is built on the key functions of cluster, so we have tried to make sure that the cluster policies that we have in the database are relevant to clusters, so that they are actually aimed at improving the kind of information that is used by clusters for the diagnostic at the local level, at the local territory, to provide inspiring examples to help create consensus and collaboration within the regional ecosystem, to build a regional strategy that could then lead to a move to the green transition, and then also the policies that are aimed at helping clusters provide the support functions, the direct business support functions that they need to deliver on that strategy. The toolkit is also tailored to different types of regions. So we know, and I think this is one of the key insights from all the work that we have done with the European Cluster Collaboration Platform and other such projects, that there is no one size fits all solution for every region, for every type of locality. So we also looked in the policy toolkit to differentiate between different kinds of regions, depending on the local ecosystem that is present. So we've identified 27 types. There are 27 EU countries, of course, but there are 7 groups of regions. Sorry, 7 groups of regions that we have identified from depending on the focus of the region on different kinds of ecosystems, from agri-textile to energy to health to also more diversified regions, which combine a lot of these different ecosystems in one. And it is possible to use the toolkit to look at only policy examples that are coming from regions that are similar to yours, or that's the idea, that have a particular economic makeup. So the policy toolkit has 164 examples. It is a searchable database and is conceived as a living tool. So it is also based on being updated continuously, and the ECCP will continue to do that over the next few years. And it is based on a filtering mechanism, so you can use one or several filters, combined filters, to try and identify inspiring policy practices that are relevant for you. And I think you see on the slide there the different kinds of filters that are available, and they are the ones that I mentioned: strategic challenges, thematic priority, cluster support, and the type of region. You can also use a free text field to just look for keywords in the policy. And then just to give you a couple of examples, if you are a policy maker who's looking to tackle the green transition by addressing a skills gap that is present in your region, and you put these filters into the toolkit, you will see that it returns 21 of the 164 policies that are currently in there that are tagged with both skills and green transition tags. And this gives you then a list of these 21. Just to give you an example, one of the outputs that comes from there is the circular economy management system. It's a French policy, French practice. It is tagged, as you can see, with skills and green transition. And it is a policy. You see a little synopsis of the policy, what it does, what it is all about. And importantly, you also see a link to the actual website where there's much more information on this policy, including also content information for the organization that is leading on the implementation of this. And this can then be used to get an idea of what is available and try to identify a couple of examples that you would like to know more about. Go on the link and try to see whether this is relevant and how it can be made relevant for your local territory. If you want to go a little bit further and you don't just want green transition and skills, but you also want to focus on a particular function of clusters. So for instance, the intelligence gathering function of clusters, then you go from 21 results to 7 results, and you get an example like this one. So the SME Initiative on Energy Transition and Climate Protection in Germany, and you see again this little synopsis of the initiative, a link to it, and also the other tags that it has. So you can also see what other things that this initiative, what other kinds of priorities this initiative has, and wants to put forward. And then finally, if you are interested in a particular region, so for instance, you are a capital region that is specialized in the creative industries, and you just want to know what can I do for clusters if I am in that particular kind of regions, what have other regions done that are similar to mine. You get an example, for instance, from Helsinki, which is also a capital region, strong on the creative industry, and you can get again an initiative there that Helsinki has implemented around, together with their clusters around the creative industry, and you can also see the other tags that this has. So the toolkit is this. The toolkit is a database that allows you to give inspiring examples on these kinds of cluster policies. I wanted to mention one other point that was already mentioned, I think, by Francesco at the beginning, ERIC. And we are also, as part of the European Cluster Collaboration Platform, of course, integrating with ERIC, or have integrated with ERIC. And there's also an ongoing project that we are doing at VVA now with JRC, providing technical support services for the maintenance and update of the ERIC knowledge base. And this is another set of examples that can be used to try and identify inspiring practices that can be interesting for businesses in relation, in particular, to the industrial symbiosis and best practices to try and achieve a more resource efficient economy. So I also would like to invite you to. It's a different set it's a different database, it's a different toolkit, but I would also like to invite you, of course, to have a look at this, the ERIC toolkit that is currently also being upgraded and updated for inspiring examples. This concludes my presentation. I know that it was a lot of information very, very quickly. But I wanted to give the word to you to allow you to ask questions about what I have proposed, and also to ask you what you think about it, whether you think this is a useful tool, how you think it could be made more useful, and also if you have some ideas about how ACR Plus perhaps could feed into the toolkit going forward as it develops further.